So, hello everyone. Welcome to our Bright Ideas session on course design best practice for higher education. We're excited to have everyone here join us today. Before we get started, I do want to let everyone know just a few housekeeping items. Closed captions are available, so feel free to turn them on or off depending on your needs. The Zoom Q&A box is available for any questions that you have throughout today's session. Please keep all questions specific to today's topic, and we'll do our best to answer them while we're together. But if you don't see your answer today, be sure to check out the Q&A report that we'll send in a follow-up email. Today's session is being recorded and will be posted on the Bright Ideas for Higher Education YouTube playlist. You can expect to see that video posted within a week. And in the coming days, we will send all registrants an email with a link to that playlist, a copy of the slide deck, which contains some additional resources, and a copy of the Q&A from today's session. So let's get started with today's agenda. We're going to start with some quick introductions. From there, we will focus on why course design matters and discuss authentic assessments. And to finish off, we'll take some time to share resources, we'll have that discussion opportunity, and we will have some live Q&A time. So for those who don't know me, my name is Victoria Fulhenshaw, and I'm a customer success specialist at D2L. Essentially, my role is to help educators like you make the most of your Brightspace tools. And I'm very excited to say that we have Anita and Eric presenting here today. I'll go ahead and have them introduce themselves. So I'll let Anita start us off.
Sure. Thanks, Victoria. Hi, everyone. I am Anita Joshi, instructional designer here at D2L. I've been here at D2L for almost 6 years. I'm super excited to be here today and talk about some best practices. I will pass it over to Eric for a quick introduction.
Thank you, Anita. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Freeman. Okay, we're good. I'm also an instructional designer at Learning Services. I've been with Learning Services for about 5 years now. I've worked with higher ed, K-12, corporate, a variety of clients across North America and the world now. And today I'm going to be talking about authentic assessment. I think a topic that kind of given what's going on in the educational world, I think is to be a very relevant topic moving forward. So I'm excited to dive in with everyone here, and I'll pass it back to Victoria.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. We also have Heather here with us today, and the two of us will be sharing resources in the chat and answering any questions that you have in the Q&A. And before we get too far, I do want to align just on some quick terms. So D2L is the company that myself, Anita, Eric, and Heather all work for. Brightspace is our product, a learning management system. And depending on where you work, you might call your Brightspace instance something different, like Avenue to Learn or Power Ed. But even if your LMS goes by a different name, if you're here, then it likely refers to Brightspace. And then we also have Brightspace Community, which is D2L's free online website where members can find great teaching and learning information, share best practices, and connect with other professionals who are using Brightspace. We'll add a link into the chat for you to register if you are not yet a member.
So thanks, Victoria. As I said, I'm super happy to be here today. So we're going to get started with why course design matters. So higher education, as we all know, is really evolving super quick, and course design really needs to evolve with it. So today's students are learning in a very different environment than even a few years ago. So information is everywhere, AI tools are becoming part of everyday learning, and students have more ways than ever to access content. At the same time, student needs and expectations are increasingly diverse. Learners are balancing work, caregiving responsibilities, and varying levels of academic preparedness, while also expecting flexibility, clarity, and meaningful engagement. And simply providing content is no longer enough. Students often don't struggle because information is unavailable. They struggle because they need support applying it, practicing with it, and connecting it to real-world contexts. As a result, the role of course design is shifting from more content delivery to learning experience design. So instead of asking only what content do I need to cover, we should also be asking how are students engaging with the material? What are opportunities for practice and feedback? And how do we support students throughout the learning process? And those design decisions can really have a major impact on student success. One of the foundations of effective course design is alignment, and I know that was mentioned in the poll there. Strong courses intentionally connect learning outcomes, activities, assessments, and feedback so that each part supports the overall learning experience. A simple way to think about this is through 4 questions. What should students be able to do? How will they practice those skills? How will they demonstrate learning? And how will they receive feedback and improve? With these, when these elements are aligned, courses feel clearer and more purposeful for students. One common challenge is that assessments sometimes measure something different from what students practiced, or students are asked to complete assignments before they've had enough opportunity to build confidence and skill. Alignment helps avoid that disconnect and creates a more coherent learning experience and gives students a clearer path towards success. So when designing learning outcomes, it's important to move beyond a broad or passive language and focus more on observable learning. For example, an outcome like understand communication theory, it's quite difficult to measure because we can't directly observe understanding. Instead, we can focus on what students should actually be able to do with their learning, analyze, apply, evaluate, or create. Outcomes like these are much more useful because they help guide the rest of the course design process, including activities, assessments, and feedback. They also create more meaningful learning experiences by emphasizing application and critical thinking more than memorization alone. And in a world where information is increasingly accessible through AI tools, those higher order learning skills become even more important. An important shift in course design is moving from content delivery to active engagement. Students, we know, learn more effectively when they're doing something with the material, things like discussing, applying, reflecting, practicing, or collaborating. And engagement doesn't necessarily come from adding more technology or tools. It comes from designing opportunities for participation and interaction. A useful question to ask when reviewing your course is, what are students doing while they're learning? If students are mostly reading or watching content without opportunities to engage, apply, or receive feedback, learning can come pretty passive very quickly. Even small design decisions can make a big difference, like adding a reflection, adding prompts, practice activities, case studies, peer discussions, or low stakes knowledge checks throughout the course. One simple but powerful strategy in course design is reducing cognitive overload. When students are overwhelmed by way too much information, unclear instructions, or inconsistent course structure, it becomes harder for them to focus on learning. We can support students by designing courses that feel organized and predictable. So that might include breaking content into smaller sections, building complexity gradually, using a consistent weekly structure, and providing examples or guided practice before high-stake assessments. Low-stake activities can also help students build confidence and practice skills before they're formally evaluated. So small design decisions like these can significantly improve student experience and engagement. Active learning doesn't have to mean completely redesigning your course. That's not what we're here for. Often it's about creating more opportunities for students to apply concepts and interact with ideas throughout the learning process. This can include activities like case studies, scenario-based discussions, peer review, collaborative work, or short reflection activities. These kinds of activities encourage students to think more critically and make stronger connections between theory and practice. They also help students move beyond memorization and towards deeper learning and application. Inclusive design is another essential part of effective course design. Students bring different experiences, learning preferences, strengths, and challenges into our courses, so designing with inclusion in mind helps create learning environments where more students can succeed. This can include providing clear instructions, using accessible documents and media, offering ways for students to participate, and making expectations transparent through things like rubrics and examples. Importantly, inclusive design doesn't only benefit specific groups of students. As we all know, these practices tend to improve clarity and usability for everyone. So, as we think about effective course design, assessment is a critical part of the learning experience. When learning outcomes, activities, and feedback are aligned, we create stronger opportunities for students to apply knowledge in meaningful and authentic ways. That naturally leads into our next topic, authentic assessment. I'm going to pass it over to the one and only Eric, who will explore how assessment can move beyond recall towards more real world applied demonstration of learning. I'll let you share. I'll stop sharing, Eric.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's a good introduction. The one
Yes.
and only Eric.
Yes. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna, as Anita said, talk about authentic assessment. Um, and what I want to do with this presentation is I want to start with a quick discussion on why assessments are critical. I know Anita touched on it a little bit. I want to dive into a little more detail on that part, the key characteristics of authentic assessment, and I'm going to finish off with some kind of smaller examples and then one example I came up with. Just forewarned, I'm a history major. I love history, and that's going to be the subject we're going to focus on today. So why do we assess? I think a lot of people, I think I saw on the poll, there's about 50% instructional designers here. So I think a lot of us could agree we know assessment is really important. But I want to focus on some other things too of why we assess and why it's really important. And I would say assessment's primary purpose is to guide learners, is what I kind of hear from most. And that's definitely not incorrect, but I think it's also a bit incomplete because I think assessments do a lot more than that when we're talking about them. So we can use assessments to help shape a student's progress by building stop signs or merge signals and kind of, again, make assessment more of a guide throughout the course. We can also use assessment to show students their gaps and successes. Students should always be aware of their own journey, and assessment in this context is like a guide rail, keeping learners aligned with what we want them to know, what we want them to learn. We can also use assessment as an engagement tool. We know student success rises when they're fully engaged. So I think even including some of those smaller assessments, formative assessments, things like that, whether through that's Creator Plus tools or H5P tools, or any other tool that the Brightspace platform offers is really important. And lastly, we can use assessment for employers or institutions to help validate that competency or skill. We keep students informed throughout their journey, and it should be no different kind of with your institution or your employer. So there's benefits for both sides. So the key characteristics of authentic assessment. So as an instructional designer, I don't think there's one kind of perfect blueprint for authentic assessment. It depends on the content, the learners, and other factors that vary between courses. So instead, I just want to focus on some key characteristics of it. So authentic assessment, again, should be aligned, as mentioned by Anita. It should be impactful. It should be relevant too. And I think relevancy is going to be crucially important moving forward. It should encourage original thought. It should emphasize a process or problem solving for learners, not just a simple yes, no answer as much as we can. And there should be a real opportunity for that learner to transfer that skill or knowledge they learn to a real world application. And to me, these are kind of whatever kind of assessment you're trying to design, these are the critical things to kind of keep in mind when you're doing that. So I'm going to kind of use a quick example here and just how we have that traditional kind of quiz versus authentic assessment. Now, I'm not come on here and say don't ever do a quiz. Quizzes are still useful. They're still impactful. They can do all those things. I just want to get everyone thinking about maybe some other alternatives we can bring into the classroom. Yeah, so traditional assessment usually begins with selection of responses. They're auto-graded, and it kind of just measures the student's knowledge of content. It's usually given at the end of a module after they go through a bunch of content. Not all the time, and again, there is other ways you can inject little quizzes here and there, more of a formative assessment strategy. And again, there is definitely a time and place for that. But with authentic assessment, we really want to focus on the learner's ability to demonstrate that proficiency through application. Sometimes that will be harder in some contexts, but as much as we can, we want to inject that in. We also want an ability to have an ability to measure the learner's, skill in a real world context or situation, again, as much as possible. And I think too, the flexibility of offering assessment throughout the year in a variety of contexts, I think that just only empowers learners and makes them feel better about their education they're taking as well. And again, I'm always about offering more flexibility, especially in the online world, because we have all these great online tools and platforms and third-party tools and everything else. So flexibility is crucially important with authentic assessment. Okay, so now I'm going to go through just I'm going to call it a process or a guideline to how I would kind of inject authentic assessment into my course. Again, this is not meant to be really hard, fast rules or a perfect process. These just come the critical steps I've taken in the past. So again, depending on the course and content and your learner profile as well, authentic assessment could look very different depending on everything. And as I said, these are just some high-level guidelines you can apply in a variety of contexts to help you design and build authentic assessments in your course, whatever that course may be. So the first step would be to revamp your learning outcomes. So again, aim to use those higher level cognitive skills that Anita touched on, evaluate, analyze, create, apply. Again, at all those times, you still need to build that base knowledge to be able to use these things. But the more you can kind of get students using those higher level cognitive skills, the better you will be. They will be too. Um, yeah. And then the next thing we want to do once we have those high level cognitive skills defined or acknowledged, we want to start defining these tasks that are able to demonstrate those high level skills. And one of the strategies I like to use is developing success criteria. So success criteria kind of help me break down that learning objective in a bit more detail, and they really help me define these tasks. So if you have one learning objective, usually you can get those down to 3 or 4 success criteria. And within those success criteria, you can really define the tasks of what they want your learner to do. And again, put this in there too. Obviously, some learning objectives cannot be broken down. Some of them are, again, at that kind of small level of cognitive skills, which is fine. But if you can break it down a bit better and define those tasks, the easier it will be to kind of inject that authentic assessment into your course. And then the last kind of guideline or kind of skill I would suggest is as much as possible, we want to mirror those tasks in an online space to ensure we are assessing for learning outcomes first and foremost. And if possible, we could also model a real life scenario as much as possible. Again, depending on your context, depending on the tools available to you, depending on the course context as well. So some examples I like to throw out there are, including interviewing a client, providing constructive criticism to learners to each other, or building a business plan or problem solving a code. Again, there's lots of different ways to get learners to use those higher level cognitive skills. And I just want to put this out there too, is I know AI can help with a lot of these things. AI is great at helping you come up with those assessment ideas, but I also think there's lots of opportunities within your community as well. So whatever industry your, students are in, maybe you're reaching out to a local industry of some sort or a local association. There's different ways to kind of bring in that authentic assessment and get learners out there in the real world solving real problems possibly. So AI can definitely help, but I would really encourage everyone too to also look outside the institution and see what other opportunities are there as well, and working with your community members to help build those authentic assessments and those experiences as well. Perfect. So for this section, I just want to do take an example I did with history and kind of show you how I went through it. I'm going to take a traditional kind of assignment and how I kind of applied some of those. I just went through the process I outlined. I went through the success criteria and I built a new assessment that I felt was more authentic and involved more problem solving and involved more collaboration between learners as well. And then I'm going to finish with kind of a quick run through of how I would build it in Brightspace. And again, how I would build in Brightspace doesn't necessarily mean this is the only way to build it in Brightspace or any other LMS. Um, I always say, please take account of the tools available to you and use them to your best ability as well. So this is kind of the authentic assessment I came up with. I won't read all of it. It's very long. But for context as well, this was designed for a first year history course at a post-secondary institution. But the reason why I love this example and why I love talking about it is because I think it takes the learner, they're not just reading about history, I'm putting them into history and they're going to make a decision based on their own skill level of problem solving, looking at the facts, and putting together a report. So that was, yeah, that'd be the initial assessment. So if you really wanted to kind of spice this up, and this is a really fun part for me as an instructional designer, what I love to do is once the learner has that assignment completed, um, we could take the next kind of assessment in multiple different ways. And these are kind of the different ideas I came up with. So the first one could be, learner hands in their assignment, then all of a sudden an announcement comes up on their feed in Brightspace. And it says it's a call from the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister tells you, hey, there's been new development. There's been rising tensions between the French and English Canada. How will your report, how will your suggestion change based on this new information? So we're getting learners to really think on their feet a little bit, and through kind of the mechanics of Brightspace, whether that's release conditions, through the announcement tool, or even a new content page popping up. Again, it gets them correctly thinking, it gets them thinking about their answer, and they kind of got to pivot a little bit too with this new information. The other option is to, once the learners kind of all hand in their assignment, the professor, the instructor, again, depending on the class size, if you have almost 200 students in a class, maybe this option isn't as just feasible. But if you have a smaller class, once the learners hand in the report, they say, yes, Canada should do this, or no, Canada shouldn't do this. They're placed into groups. And then if you have an in-class session, you could have an in-class debate based on what learners have decided from the report. And again, we're getting them to critically think, we're getting them to collaborate. They're not just retelling history, they're almost participating in history. And then once the learners, if they're all online, you can even give them a group discussion forum where whatever kind of side they chose in the report, they're put in that group discussion. They can't see the other group discussion. And if within that group discussion, you have additional information of like questions you're going to ask, how the debate's going to go, and learners kind of have to somehow prepare with themselves to have that debate in class. And then you as the instructor could simply bring up thing and may not warn them about certain things, but bring up certain ideas or topics that were relevant during that time into that session. Again, we want students problem solving, we want students to think on their feet, and we want that kind of room for original thought. This assessment does all that. So that's my opinion. I would consider this authentic assessment. But again, this is just one example. There's many different ways you could do it, but I just wanted to kind of talk about example I came with because again, I love history. So this is my favorite thing to do. So I just want to end with just a couple benefits of authentic assessments. I think a lot of this we've kind of pulled out, and I think a lot of people know for sure. But again, I just want to go through them super quickly. So authentic assessment, it encourages learners to actively participate in the evaluation process, whether that's peer self-reflection. And again, kind of following that debate, you could have another assignment where each group evaluates each other's argument in class or something like that. Again, lots of different ways you could take that. Authentic assessment prepares learners to take on real life challenges. So in the example I brought up, it really can help students, again, focus on those problem solving activities and also work on their collaboration skills as well. So working with other people, that's a skill we all need to have in the real world. So that would also help in that situation. Authentic assessment also integrates assessment and instruction to create a detailed evaluation process. Again, that problem solving skill builds the learner's problem solving skills and enhances one ability to apply that knowledge in other real life contexts. And lastly, and one of the things I think is really important about authentic assessment is it enhances collaboration and creates positive teaching and learning relationships. And I think that's something, especially in the universities today, a little harder to kind of coordinate, to create. So the more you can build these authentic assessments, get students working together, the more you can also build relationships between students and between kind of instructors and institutions as well. And I think too, just sorry to finish up, as educators, I think we have to really start looking at our assessment strategies. Um, take an honest look in the mirror and make sure we are creating those really meaningful and impactful assessments. Just with the rise of AI and the growth of AI, I know using AI to cheat and other things like that is going to be one of those topics that's going to get bigger and bigger. And one of the biggest things I've learned in my own journey with AI is AI is really good at pointing out holes um, in your content, in your assessments, and everything. So I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's also going to be a really big opportunity for us as educators, as instructional designers, to really build some really cool, authentic assessments and some impactful assessments too, kind of moving forward. Awesome. So thank you for that, everyone. I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to pass it back to Victoria.
Thank you, Eric. Before I get into any of the like ending resources or anything, I just want to kind of add into what you're with authentic assessment. I know, and I added the link in the chat for just our Bright Ideas for Higher Education YouTube playlist because we've had so many sessions in the past where we might touch on different components of authentic assessment or just like course design in general, but because course design just really impacts everything within your course. And so truly every session that we've had in the past for Bright Ideas has related to course design best practice, whether we've explicitly stated it or not. And I think it was just this past month that we had Dana come from Bongo, and she really emphasized just kind of what you can do or different things that you can do to really create um, kind of those authentic assessments and really try to ensure that academic integrity with AI. And so definitely be sure to check out the link in the chat for that session is relevant to what we were just discussing. We also had a session on learning outcomes and like an introduction to the learning outcomes tool. And I know that that's kind of one of the first key things that you have to do is just ensure that your assessments are aligned to what you want your students to really learn and get out of those assessments. Um, there's a handful of other sessions. There's been so many sessions that we've had in the past. We've had curriculum or what I put it in the chat and it's not coming to my competency, not curriculum, competency-based education. We've had sessions on that. And so each of those sessions for folks who really wanted to get into like more specific tools within Brightspace, those really go into those like demo portions. This, with it being course design, is just so much. I don't want to say theory, but it really is. I feel like this is more discussion led of a topic, and so thankfully we do have plenty of time left because we are still here for another 28 minutes. I mean, it won't take me that long to go through the resources, so we'll have time to go through and do that discussion. We have some experts here, so I just want to say, Eric and Anita, thank you so much for your presentation portion so far, and I'm excited to hear what everybody ends up asking in the chat and whoever wants to come off mute as well. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go ahead and start with some resources. So the first is, it might be a little early because I know we do still have time for our session. But the first is just, our QR code and our links for our post-session survey. So you don't have to start it right now because I know we do still have some more time left in the session, but I wanted to go ahead and get the link out there for you so you can have it ready for you whenever you'd like to. But we would love to have your feedback on the session. Your feedback does help us to improve our offerings for future sessions and just better meet your needs. So if you'd like to participate, the QR code is on the screen, or you can use the link that Heather added into the chat. Um, we've also added a couple links on this slide that provide information on our product idea exchange or PI process for those who aren't familiar. So if you have any feedback on Brightspace itself and how just the learning management system functions, be sure to check out those particular resources. But, uh, and I'm not there yet. I thought that was my next slide and it's not here. But I'd also invite everybody here to join the D2L Champions program if you're not a champion already. I think I see some folks that are attending that are already D2L champions. I do have the chat open. Feel free to kind of share if you already are a champion. Um, Essentially, being a D2L champion gives you the opportunity to receive points for sharing your experience, providing your feedback, and even, checking out webinars like this one. You can then redeem these points for things like swag, gift cards, charity options, and additional D2L services. So you can find the link for the Champions program in the chat now. And we are excited to share that we have another Bright Ideas session coming up on June 5th, so just in a couple weeks now, where we'll be diving into the new content experience. You can find the registration link for that session in the chat now. And following that session, we will be taking a short pause over the summer with the goal of resuming our Bright Ideas series in the fall with more sessions and more guest presenters, whether that be D2Lers or folks like you that are using Brightspace. So we're looking forward to continuing the conversation with you then. I see people talking about the moose in the Champions program. I don't know how many points it takes to get a moose, but I do know that there will be plenty of moose at Fusion, which I will talk about in just a second too. Before I move off this slide, I do just want to mention for those who don't know, our training team also hosts 2 monthly sessions for all Brightspace users. The first is a Q&A drop-in session where you can get your Brightspace questions answered in real time. And then the second is focused on what's new in Brightspace using our monthly release notes. So these sessions do give you just free access to our D2L training team in a way that you might not get otherwise. So be sure to check them out if you're available. And Heather added a link for with information on those in the chat already. And as I alluded to, I do want to share that D2L Fusion is happening in Phoenix, Arizona in July. It's just, I think, 8 weeks away, if I'm calculating correctly. Fusion is D2L's annual learning conference, bringing together educators, administrators, and leaders to explore the latest in teaching, learning, and technology. I think Heather has already added a link in the chat for registration and additional information. If you can't join us in person, we will be very sad to hear that. But we also encourage you to register for the virtual experience so you can be a part of the excitement and get to see the live stream of our main stage events and explore some different on-demand options. So if for folks who are already signed up, I'd love to hear in the chat if are you registered for Fusion? I know Anita and I will definitely be there. We're part of what we call the Moose Crew. So we'll be mostly behind the scenes and at the registration desk and anywhere and everywhere where folks are needed. So you'll get to see her and I there in person. I see a couple other folks that are registered and presenting. Oh, I love that. I love having the presenters here. Uh, the downside of being part of the Moose Crew is I can't always watch all the presentations live. So hopefully I get to, some of these sessions are recorded and we can watch online as well. Awesome. Seeing a lot of people that are going. And I know a few folks that are going, some of my own customers that are coming for the first time. So that's always love that.
Definitely bring some sunscreen. It's going to be a hot
Yes.
one.
I did hear though that some of the hotels you can just like go, you are covered or you don't even have to leave the outside to get to the space where the event's happening. So I don't remember which one, but I did hear that that is a possibility.
Oh, that would be great.
If you don't like going outside. I managed to not get sunburned in Savannah last year, so fingers crossed that'll be
That
the
was a
same.
hot fusion, that one for sure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Just really appreciate you being able to join us for this session live. And if you weren't able to attend live, hello from the recording. As a reminder, this session was recorded and will be posted to our Bright Ideas for Higher Education YouTube playlist. That will be posted in the coming week. So be sure to check that out once it's available. You'll also, anybody who has registered will get a link to that playlist, a copy of the slide deck, which has some various additional resources, a copy of the Q&A from today's session, which there weren't too many questions, but we'll have them in there. And then as well as a copy of our post-session survey as well, or a link to the post-session survey. So Really appreciate everybody joining and participating in the discussion today. Hopefully, we will see everybody at our next session for on June 5th for the new content experience. But if we don't see you there, hopefully Fusion. And then if not, we will be back in the fall with some brand new sessions, some guest presenters and everything. So looking forward to it. Um, I see a lot of movement in the chat. I haven't gotten a chance to see everything quite
Lots of
yet,
thank
but
yous, which we appreciate. Thank you so much.
yeah, if there's anything else, Eric or Anita, you wanted to sign off with, would love to hear it.
No, just thank you so much for having us. This was a great opportunity to share a little bit about what we do, and hopefully we helped some of those folks out there.
Yeah. Echoing. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to us kind of blabber on there. Appreciate it. And I love talking. I always say talking shop, so that's what I like to
Yeah,
say. So I appreciate everyone and having these great discussions.
Awesome. All right, we have technically a minute or two left, but I think the questions and the extra comments have died down. So I'll go ahead and I don't know whether I love or hate this phrase, but I'll give people a couple minutes back in their day and look forward to seeing everybody at a future session. Thank you again, Anita and Eric. We really love having you here, and we'll have you back anytime.
awesome.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so
Thank you.
much.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye
Bye.
bye.